And welcome everyone to another Smart Money Circle episode. I'm Adam Sarhan. With me today is Craig Brockie, who's the founder of Ultimate Health Solutions and the author of Ultimate Health. Craig, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to the Smart Money Circle.
Yeah, I'm glad we connected. Thanks for having me on.
So, Craig, I always like to begin. Can you please tell us your story and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I don't want to bore people, but anybody who's having some sort of chronic symptom or say chronic pain or overweight or any of these types of things, maybe chronic anxiety or depression issues, whatever's going on for a person who's listening right now, I'm a testament that I've been there, I've done that, and I came out the other side just fine. When 30 years ago, my health was just a disaster. I was 21 years old. I had chronic pain. My immune system was totally destroyed. I was getting sick all the time. I was actually even concerned I had HIV or AIDS. I was in like everything. I was just getting sick all the time. I just couldn't stay healthy. And then my anxiety was crippling. I remember I'd wake up in the morning, get out of bed. I wouldn't even want to get out of bed because I was just in anxiety. But, my mind would already be racing and there's no way I could fall back asleep. And I'd walk to the bathroom and, I'd look at myself in the mirror and just wonder what happens. You know, I would look at myself and, feel guilt, shame, and regret, like all this remorse. I'd have this anxiety. My face was puffy and I was tired. And, I'd look at my shoulders, they were weak. My stomach was protruding. I was just like, what, how did I get here? And then fast forward 30 years later, I'm now 51 years old. I feel fantastic. Most people think I'm at least 10 years younger. Like they're shocked when I say I'm 51. And I don't wear sunscreen. I don't moisturize. Like I'm not focused on looking young. It's just that I've done these things for 30 years now that make me feel healthy and look healthy. And it's mainly because of natural medicine. I just always remain a student and I'm always learning. And it's one of those things like the more you know about health, the more you realize you don't know because there's just so much to learn about it. In fact, I thought I knew something very conclusively up until last week. And then I was listening to some podcasts over the weekend. And I've consumed about 12 hours of this guy's content. His name's Jack Cruz, Dr. Jack Cruz. He would make a good guest for you also. But just very, very fascinating stuff. And just so I just keep my eyes wide open and my ears and I'm listening. I like to listen more than speak. So to have this opportunity to speak to you and your audience is just a pleasure for me.
Hey, Craig, it's a pleasure for you to be here. Thank you. I've got a million questions going through my mind as you're speaking, so I'm going to ask you two things. First
Sure.
off, what did you know conclusively, but you just changed your mind on? I'll ask that question first.
Okay. Um, well, I've been into naturopathic medicine for decades now, and I strongly believe in it. I still do. But I had no idea to what degree that blue light and artificial light was disrupting not just circadian rhythms, but also to what degree it can impact dopamine and testosterone, because it's clear that testosterone levels in men, for sure, has been declining now for decades, and it's quite alarming to me. I thought it had more to do with xenoestrogens, which are fake estrogens that are present in plastics and other chemicals. I thought it had more to do with that, and then also just poor nutrition because big food does their best to addict us to their food, and they don't make any effort to put nutrition in it of any kind of benefit to us. In fact, I would argue quite the opposite, that they're trying to make us sick because it's just, sick people are good business, unfortunately, for big pharma and big food. Like if they're addicted to your food and addicted to your drugs to handle the problems from the food. To me, that was the main thing. But I just had no idea to what degree that these young men who are playing video games for, hours on end and getting the blue light and not going out. When I was a kid, we just went outside and we played all day.
Seriously? Yeah,
I didn't have a
right?
cell phone. I was born in 1974. The 80s to me was such a magical time to be a child. I just remember going out in the morning, getting all that sun. We didn't wear sunscreen. I didn't wear sunglasses. It was just such a good time and a good time to be alive. And nowadays, people are really introverted. They're connecting through social media and their phone. And I'm guilty of it as much as the next. In fact, what I do with my cell phone, and I only started doing this about a week ago, is you can set limits. Like there's ways to override your social media addiction. So I have it set now for a 15-minute limit on social media, and that goes across all platforms. And because I used to even actually delete the X, like our Twitter app from my phone. And I'm actually very, very active on X. And that's how you met me, is because I'm posting all the time on X and very successful there. But for me, just setting those limits and not getting all that light, that artificial light, I was very aware of EMFs, or electromagnetic frequencies and fields, and how those were detrimental. But I just didn't understand to what degree getting inundated by the artificial light. In fact, when I go to bed, I have an incandescent bulb, because it's really hard to find incandescent bulbs these days. They've almost phased them out to the point where almost everything's LED or fluorescent, which is very, very unnatural. But next to my bed, I always have an incandescent bulb there. So when I'm actually like reading before bed, I'm at least at that point getting natural light. But it's really difficult to have incandescent throughout your whole house because it's been so phased out.
Yeah, wow, that's really powerful. So that's my first question. Second powerful, I love your story, how you transform that pain, physical,
Mhm.
emotional, spiritual pain into pleasure, so to speak, and you're helping others. What were some lessons that you learned? How did you first identify? I'm fascinated with the whole idea of breaking walls. Like I call them mental walls. Like you do something, you hit
Mhm.
a wall, we all have, right? So I'm fascinated by people that can break through and can get through that. So what did you do to A, recognize you had that problem, and then B, what do you do to break through that wall and get to the other side of it?
Okay. Well, it was clear to me that I wasn't doing something right, because I was 21 years old. Even my libido was destroyed at that age. So I'm pretty sure I didn't do a hormonal panel at that time, but I'm pretty sure that my testosterone was destroyed at that time. What's interesting now that I've just been listening to this guy's podcast and talking to you, Dr. Jack Cruz, giving him another shout. But at the time, I was so sick, and this was before LED screens, but I was starting an internet marketing business. I was doing basically websites in the 1990s, and then started doing search engine optimization before it was even called that. It was called search engine positioning back then. But we had these monitors that were actually cathode ray tube monitors before LEDs. And I remember my eyes would just get bloodshot. And it was just so damaging to me. I actually had to wear tinted glasses to be able to cope with the amount of like crap that was coming at me. Fortunately, today I don't have that issue, but it's interesting to me now to circle back and realize that that was really what was going on. All this artificial light that was even more intense than this LED stuff. But I think the LED stuff is probably even worse because of the blue light aspect of it. Anyway, Jack's the expert on that, so I'm still learning from him on that. But what really turned things around for me was naturopathy. I was introduced to a naturopathic physician, and he basically determined that I had what's called leaky gut, and I had too much acid in my system. So he called it acidosis. And I had a fungal overgrowth because fungus is called candida. So actually, this doctor, he's up in Vancouver, Canada. His name is Dr. Lawrence Swetlikoff. And one of his previous doctors, Dr. Ian Chelowa, who's now in Maui, basically they had me taking things to kill off the candida. In fact, that's almost the first thing they do with everybody. And candida and parasites and bad bacteria that are in your digestive tract, you just want to reduce those populations down to a healthy range. And I believe what my biggest problem was is in high school, I took tetracycline, which is an antibiotic, because I had acne. And not extremely bad acne, but it was enough that it introverted me and made me feel insecure. So I wanted to take antibiotics to kill that bacteria so I could have clearer skin. But I didn't know that how much damage I was doing to my gut. And I was clearing out all the good bacteria that I had in there. And which, when you get rid of the good bacteria, then the bad bacteria and fungus and parasites can basically take residence and really mess things up. A lot of people don't realize this, but that ties in with your anxiety and depression a lot also. And I had no idea at the time, but it's even acknowledged today by the American Psychological Association. You can go to their website, and there's a statement on their website that 95% of the serotonin is actually produced in the gut, not in your brain.
Wow.
So when your gut is that messed up, and hormones and all these things are produced and manufactured and changed, and that's where you absorb your nutrients. So if your small intestines are inflamed or leaking, my small intestines were actually leaking, and that's very, very common these days. I think anyone with chronic fatigue or what's the other one? Fibromyalgia, where someone's just got pain all the time. But so many other things I believe are connected to a bad gut, and specifically a leaky gut. And that's where things that you're eating and you're drinking are not getting properly broken down, and they're actually leaking into your bloodstream before they're properly broken down. And your body just goes, well, what the hell is this Big Mac floating around in here? Or
Right.
what is this foreign object? It's not properly broken down, and your immune system's just on like extreme alert all the time. And I think that's probably why I was getting sick all the time. Is just my immune system was so battered and running out of 10 out of 10 all the time that there was just no more resources to handle the rest. But cleaning up my gut, and now my business is really focused on gut health. There was a great book that came out about 2 years ago now by New York Times bestselling author Dr. William Davis. He got famous writing a book series called Wheat Belly, and he's teaching people how to avoid wheat. And I just he took it a step further. And this guy's a cardiologist, so he actually realized that heart disease was strongly correlated to insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and such a great guy. And he took it a step further though. He started researching the microbiome and the bacteria that should be in your gut. And then he started suggesting, well, what instead of taking these capsules, and I never had any benefit from taking capsules of probiotics. He said, why don't you take these capsules and actually put them into like milk or cream or coconut or whatever and ferment it yourself and take the population of that bacteria up to a stronger degree and then consume that. And he wrote a book called Super Gut explaining that. And I got really into that. And now we've sold, I don't know how many thousands of these probiotic yogurt makers that people can make their own probiotics at home. And the success stories that we get from this is just incredible. And I love being a part of that because I know how much we're improving people's health and making them feel not just physically better, but emotionally better. It also can help boost something called oxytocin, which is produced in the gut. And that's a hormone that is associated with feelings of empathy, love, closeness. In fact, when you give someone a hug or someone says a kind word to you, you release oxytocin. So being part of that is just exciting for me.
I absolutely love it. Oh, well, thank you for that transformation and that story. So you recognize that the gut was leaky, the gut was full of bad bacteria. Let's address those issues. Let's get good bacteria levels up, bad bacteria levels down, eat healthier, and then exercise, and then focus on that. Is that a good summary of the transformation?
Yeah, and the other thing is when your gut is destroyed, you have to realize that your absorption of nutrients is very, very compromised. And then I'd like to urge anybody who's listening right now, if they're having issues with you know, bloating, flatulence, indigestion, acid reflux. If you're not already experiencing more serious health issues, then in my opinion, you're just an accident wait, like you're a diagnosis waiting to happen.
Right.
So it's a good thing that you're having these things and you can realize that, hey, this is an early warning sign. This is like the canary in the coal mine, if you will. But if someone already has chronic symptoms and they also have these things, you, in my opinion, and based on the research I've seen and the doctors I've spoken to, it's addressing that and fixing that can actually handle so many or actually improve so many different conditions holistically. So when your body is run down, like I like to say, whatever your weakest link is can flare up. But when you take your health up to a higher level, then all these chronic symptoms can chill out. And yeah, that's kind of what my book Ultimate Health is all about, is just taking people through step by step on an easy gradient that they can have wins on, just how to restore their health, and not just that, take it to such a high level that, you know, they're experiencing ultimate health.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love your mission too of helping people look and feel 10 years younger than they are. So let's talk about the yogurt business because I know this is really powerful. It's very popular. It's gone viral. Please tell us about your business, what you do, and anything else that you'd like to share.
Sure. So I really like the audience that you work with. In fact, I used to be a financial advisor at one point, and I've had wins and losses as a financial, uh, like running my own finances. So I definitely admire the group that you cater to. And also, yeah, and these are the people I want to help get to the next level because oftentimes they're opinion leaders, and at the very least, they've got family, if not parents, that usually have some sort of child, like a wife or partner, children, and just boosting that up across the board is important to me. Um, Gut health, though, like, so I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a biologist. I'm just a guy who got really sick 30 years ago and had to
Right.
figure out for myself how to get myself out of the mess and just listen to some really smart people and was able to, distill that down into easy steps for people to follow. In fact, your last guest or one of your most recent guests, Dr. Matt Dawson, you know, I remain a student. I actually go to different doctors and specialists. I just signed up for Wild Health and did my blood draw this morning because I'm interested to seeing what they can do. I also have worked with 10X Health Systems and other doctors, and I see chiropractors and all kinds of people to get help me. And I'm just trying to help other people. But specific to business, this probiotic yogurt maker is really, it's 90% of my business. It's gone viral on the internet. And Dr. Berg, who's a health influencer on YouTube and other social media, he got a hold of my yogurt maker, and he and I know each other through church. And so somehow he realized it was my yogurt maker, and he reached out to me by email saying, Craig, I had some questions about making yogurt. Can you help me? I was like, whoa, sure, because he's got a lot of influence. And sure enough, he loved it. And I introduced him to Dr. William Davis, the founder of the Super Gut movement, and they hit it off. And the next thing I know, Dr. Berg says, Craig, get ready. I'm doing a video. And I just had no idea to what degree he could raise the amount of awareness for my business. But over time, like very quickly, his first video came out and my sales went up about 10x the first day. And
Wow.
then, went up like 5x the next day. And by that time, I was running out of stock. I'd sent everything in for the United States into Amazon, and I just couldn't keep up with it. So since then, we've just been ordering, and just improving the product, making it better and better and better. And then just listening to our customers and what their needs and wants are, just to make sure that it is the best and the ultimate probiotic yogurt maker so they can actually cultivate their own probiotics. And one thing that Dr. Davis teaches in his book, and I highly recommend everybody pick up a copy of Super Gut, because he explains how different probiotics have, like different species of probiotics have different purposes. And that's something I didn't really even know before. I used to take these capsules of probiotics and have no real clue on what I was taking and why I was taking it. But he really breaks it down on what this specific one does and what this specific one does and why you'd want this group and why you'd want to push those populations up in your body.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So I love the fact that it just clicks and goes viral. I love the fact that you were doing it before it went viral and you had your finger on the pulse, so to speak. And congrats on all the success. And hopefully the success continues to grow and grow and grow. So I'd like to know, Craig, let's shift the topic a little bit now and talk about timeless advice. How do you handle risk, and what are some mistakes you've seen people make with respect to risk management in life, in health, in business,
Sure.
anywhere you want to go?
Well, I think I'm a good example of it. When I was growing up, my parents and the media, I would say in general, like doctors were well respected. And I think they still are today. And I think most doctors are very, very well intentioned. I think the system that educates them is broken and has the wrong interests. But I think the doctors themselves want the patients to be healthy. But growing up, like my parents were part of the penicillin generation, I believe, or maybe it was their parents, but where, these miracle drugs came out in the 1900s of the 20th century. And, there was just so much faith in medicine. And at the same time, there wasn't really an awareness when I was growing up about, I mean, we knew that sugary cereal, breakfast cereal, and Coca-Cola and these things were not good for us. But I did not understand. I don't think my parents did either, or most people, just how polluted the food system was becoming. And not just the packaged foods, but how much herbicide and pesticide and even the minerals that they put on the soil, they're only using three of the dozens of minerals that should be there, and they're only replenishing it with three of them. And worse off, those three typically are manufactured from petrochemicals like petroleum. So to me, that just doesn't make sense. And people are just getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And at the same time, they're getting more addicted in the last 30 years to screens and not going outside and getting natural sunlight. And they're not exercising. They're more and more sedentary, working at a computer. Just everything's stacked against us right now. Basically, if you just follow the way everybody likes to live their life, driving around in cars, everything's just going to become worse and worse. So for me, timeless advice would be just, if you're not already, be open to looking at these alternative or holistic medical solutions. Because even if your health hasn't fallen apart yet, for me, the impetus was I had chronic pain, crippling anxiety, and up until that point, I was like, "Oh, Western medicine's the bomb. This is great." It's not until you have chronic conditions that they don't know how to solve that you realize, okay, I need to do something differently. So I would encourage people, even if they're not experiencing chronic conditions, just to start, dialing into some of these things and implementing changes in their life, whether that be eating more organic food or getting more sunlight or exercising more, just the common sense stuff, using their screen less, putting some limitations on their social media, keeping their children off of. One thing that irks me these days is just how the iPad and iPhones, not just to slam Apple, because there's Android and stuff too, but how those have been, just kind of like babysitters for kids these days, and how you see someone in a restaurant and the adults are having a nice conversation, the kids just glued to the phone. And granted, adult talk is boring for children, but I, you know, I
It's
guess,
a bit much.
yeah,
It's a bit.
exactly.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's a bit much. So, okay, I love that. How about timeless mistakes?
Okay, well, I've made plenty of those
So have I.
I've had two big business successes in my life, one big investment success, and then a whole lot of failures, like way more failures than successes. So I think it comes down to what your purpose is in life and what's driving you. And just looking at setbacks as barriers and part of the game, so that if your purpose is high enough, when you experience setbacks, whether those are physical, financial, whatever those setbacks are, just picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and moving on. For me, some of my biggest mistakes were on a personal level, where I was doing things unethical. When grew up as a kid, I was very, very ethical. I was a good kid. And then somewhere along the line, I started doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. And all of a sudden, I'm drinking alcohol and I'm doing drugs and, you know, not being a good, faithful husband, things like that just destroyed me as a human being. Because I think most people are good people. And when they start doing things that they know are wrong, they feel bad about themselves. And I remember even just 15 years ago, how had a lot of guilt, shame, and regret. I had a hard time looking myself in the eye in the mirror. That's how bad I felt about myself. And so introverted, because when you're feeling that bad about yourself, there's almost no way, unless you're really faking it. And if you're faking it, you're not being genuine and real, but how to actually connect and be extroverted with others. So fortunately, I was introduced to Scientology, and that's worked really, really well for me, in Dianetics. And in that, I learned how to really take control of the things and take responsibility for the things I had done wrong, and really make amends for those things, so that they no longer made me feel guilty and shameful and regretful, and how I could just move on with my life and feel more extroverted, more happy, and really focus on helping others, which I think is what really life is all about.
So let's talk about that a little bit because that's fascinating for me. Let's talk about, I know in the book too, you talk about detoxing and making, if from a health standpoint, but I also want to talk about it from an emotional standpoint. So can you share what you've learned or what you recommend people do as far as everyone's made mistakes. Everyone's had quote unquote failures or things that they're not
Right.
proud of, whatever, right? So, okay, how do you handle that? Most people try to ignore it or put it under the carpet. One person told me you keep putting stuff under the carpet until it becomes a mountain, then a molehill, then it just turns into a big, huge thing that there's too much stuff it just gets out of control. How do
Right.
you resolve a lot of that stuff, both physically and then mentally, please?
Right. Well, physically, I think healing your gut is fundamental. To give someone a bit of a head start, though, to help just calm things down, magnesium is great. There's a lot of herbs that can help with anxiety. There's a great group out there called truehope.com, and they actually help people not only get off of psychiatric medications, but avoid using them in the first place. And the guy who founded that's got an incredible story. His wife committed suicide due to bipolar disorder, which used to be called manic depression. Yeah, it's terrible. And he did not have a solution for her, unfortunately. And then two of his children got diagnosed with bipolar disorder and they were both suicidal. And he had just hit the wall. He's like, I have to solve this problem. Like that, again, barrier and purpose. He had a huge barrier. He already lost his wife. He was about to lose his two children who were also suicidal. He had to increase his purpose. And this guy brought his purpose up and he just overcame these barriers. And he actually discovered a specific mineral, which I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's part of his blend, but it was actually came from pig feed, believe it or not. He met a pig farmer that when their animals would get psychotic or, aggressive, they would give the pigs a particular mineral. And he thought, well, if it's safe for pigs, maybe it's safe for humans. Turns out it was. And it was also equally, effective with humans. And then he started, building other vitamins and minerals around that. And they also consult people and help them through their problems. For me personally, um, life has got a lot of setbacks and a lot of trauma in it. And like you said, is if you try to pretend that stuff doesn't happen, I think that's most people's tendency is try to pretend it didn't happen and don't focus any attention on it. But what Dianetics is all about is taking that traumatic moment and actually running through it several times with the help of someone else. And you can do this freely at home with a friend. They just have to buy the book or the DVD or go to Dianetics.org to learn how to do it. And you just run through that incident. And sometimes you'll actually start crying and emotions will turn on, but you actually keep running through that incident and you'll start picking up more and more details about it as you run through it until you're actually happy about it. And because you're getting this release of, wow, I've looked at it that so thoroughly now, I'm okay with it. I'm going to move on with my life and I feel happy now. In fact, one of the signals that the process is done on Dynamics is that the person's happy, smiling, oftentimes laughing about that painful incident, which they just could not look at only moments ago. And then on the more personal side with ethics, because I was doing things that were unethical and I knew that they were unethical, I was feeling really bad about myself. And again, I was trying to pretend, oh yeah, that the drugs I was doing, or that, you know, unfaithfulness that I was doing. Let's pretend that doesn't happen. And there's just not a responsibility there. And you tend to keep just going on and doing more of that stuff and ever going down, like down a dwindling spiral where it just gets worse and worse.
Right.
But the key is to actually look at, well, what did I do? When was that? What were all the details with that? And then, actually taking real strong responsibility for that incident. And then actually, if there's some sort of corrective action that needs to be taken, say you harmed somebody or, just making amends with that. In fact, our church has many social programs. One of them is called Criminon, which we rehabilitate criminals and help them get back their self-respect. Another one's called Narcanon, where we help addicts get rid of their addiction. But a big part of that, to make sure that they don't just relapse, is not just put them on a different drug, which is what a lot of detoxes do, but actually clean the drugs out of their system and then spot, well, why did that person start using drugs in the first place? Like, what were they trying to solve to get onto drugs? Like, what were they trying to not look at? And actually helping them take responsibility for those things, make amends, Like maybe they were stealing money from their mom to buy drugs or something like that. Well, maybe they need to, apologize to their mom and give her back some money or do some community service or whatever that is to really, in their own mind, know that they've taken responsibility for that. And when I see the wins and relief that people have from doing these things, it just makes me so happy. I actually donate hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to help promote those social programs to make sure that more people can experience those things because I know how much it did for me and I want those same things for others.
Wow, that is so powerful. So you're saying instead of avoiding that quote unquote trauma, whether it's a capital T or lowercase t trauma, deal with it head on, neutralize it as step one, and then step two, instead of it being pain, turn it into something that can become a pleasurable emotion for them because they've gone through it so many times, they've worked it out, they've become at peace with it, and it's no longer controlling them. They now control it. So it empowers people. Is that a good way of summarizing what you just said?
Absolutely. And that's what Dianetics is all about. And then the other thing, there's actually a free online course at Scientologycourses.com or .org, Scientologycourses.org. These are free courses. I think it's called the Integrity and Honesty course. And just running through that just makes you see, okay, that's really how it works. And when I do something that I know is bad, it makes me feel bad. And until I actually take responsibility for that and decide that I'm not going to do that again, and actually take responsibility for fixing any wrongs that you've done or that I've done, that it's just really hard to move on and let go of those things. But once you do, wow, do you feel good? And wow, do you just want to help other people feel the same way?
Yeah, because it no longer controls you. You're now in control. So you regain that power. It's empowering. And then it becomes like a domino effect where it just snowballs, for lack of a better word.
Absolutely.
So, question for you, Craig. When you go through your process and you've come out the other side, you've had a tremendous amount of pain when you were younger. Almost now it's a blessing that it happened so early in your life and not later. You mentioned something earlier about doing things now to preemptively strike so you don't end up with the chronic disease, or at least reduce the chance of chronic diseases, those bad things. Can you speak to that a little bit, or tell people or educate people a little bit about what could be done to help them get more on track, so to speak, from a
Right.
health standpoint?
Sure. Okay. Well, again, I mean, this is my business. So, but it's the reason it's my business because it's so important. Healing the gut. So getting rid of the candida yeast in your system or reducing its population, knocking off the bad bacteria. There's something called SIBO right now. It stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That's huge. Another word called dysbiosis, which just basically means you got something messed up with your gut. And there's actually an issue with stomach acidity where people get heartburn. And heartburn is where, things are not digesting properly. They're starting to come back up, and then there's a sphincter there that's not holding it down. There's a couple of things. One that indicates usually that your stomach is not acidic enough. So taking antacids, Tums, Rolaids, that kind of stuff actually makes it worse. Taking
Wow.
something like vinegar before you eat, or something called betaine hydrochloric acid, betaine HCl, or digestive enzymes, not diluting a lot, like not drinking a lot before you're eating or when you're eating, because that dilutes the stomach acid and the digestive enzymes. Also, chewing your food. I remember my grandparents used to just harp on me when I was a
Yeah.
kid. I was a fast eater, and they would say, like, chew your food 30 times or something. They had some arbitrary number. I was like, you got to be kidding. But I think there's some truth to that. Like, we're not even breaking down the food before we're swallowing it, never mind having the tools in our body to break it down further. And then when it gets to the small intestine, that tends to be inflamed, sometimes leaking, sometimes mucus laden, bad bacteria. So even if you was broken down and the stomach had broken down, absorbing it into the bloodstream where it actually goes to work is inhibited to a large degree. And then people have a lot of people have constipation issues if they're not actually moving, having a bowel movement at least once a day, preferably 2 or 3 times a day. These really toxic substances are not making an exit. It backs up, causes problems with the liver. Once your liver is compromised, like your whole system's going to be messed up. So chapter 1 of my book, people can get that for free at craigbrockie.com/free. They can download the first chapter. That explains exactly how to clean out their colon and how to make sure that they're moving regularly, because I recommend no one actually starts any detox protocol until your colon is moving properly, because otherwise you can get adverse reactions where you're stirring up these toxins and you're releasing these toxins, but they don't have anywhere to go. In fact, sauna is very good. There's a great book called Clear Body, Clear Mind, which I think everybody should read. And that shows another detox program that is absolutely amazing for actually getting the toxins out of your fat tissues. And a lot of toxins are fat soluble and they stick in the fat tissue. So even if you've cleaned out your liver and your kidneys, there a lot of people have these toxins. I think we all do, trapped in our fatty tissues. So getting those out, it's just a progression. And then when people go down that road and they do these things, they just start feeling better and they start feeling younger and they're more hopeful and they start being like me and wanting to go on podcasts talking about it to people because they want to help other people feel just fantastic and not be dependent on drugs and surgery, which unfortunately is the way the medical system is set up, is hook people on drugs, keep them on drugs for the rest of their life, cut things out that aren't behaving. And, there's not just this thought of how do we prevent it in the first place? How do we heal something that's messed up once it's already messed up, rather than cutting it out or just suppressing the symptom? So I don't know, it's just a super exciting area for me. And obviously it's something I'm passionate about. I'm glad that even though you're talking mainly about finances and, if your health is gone, though, what good is that money in the bank account?
It's not worth anything.
Right.
Not at all. So
Exactly.
yeah, absolutely love it, Craig. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm going to have links to everything you discussed that's related to you. People can go on Amazon. They could type in Ultimate Health Yogurt. They'll see your machine,
Yeah.
the Ultimate Health book in Amazon. I'll have the links to your websites. Whatever you send me, I'll publish in the description so people can go back and click on it and get direct access.
Right.
Thank you for
I really
taking the
appreciate
time.
that. I'm most active on X right now. I'm planning to do the other social platforms soon, but X is where I publish the most information, and I have a free newsletter. And if anyone's into peptides, I absolutely love peptides. I've gone super deep on those, semaglutide and Ozempic and stuff. But that's just the beginning. There's dozens of peptides that have profound, powerful effects. I've got a free peptide cheat sheet people can download that covers the top 30 peptides. Also have a weight loss guide people are happy to get. My help is yours. And again, I've got lots to learn. So if you know something that's doing great and I haven't talked about it, I'd love to hear about it and research that too.
Well, thank you, Craig. Can you, well, afterward, just send me a link to whatever it
Yep.
is, those resources, and I'll just include it
Yep.
in the description so people can just click on the link that you provide.
Fantastic. Thank
The
you. I really
links.
appreciate that.
Beautiful. Well, Craig, thank you so much for taking the time. Congrats on all the success. Hopefully we'll have you on again soon. This is really, it's one of the most important topics out there, and it's under talked about, under loved. It's almost like an undervalued stock, to use that pun or that word, but it's something that I'm passionate about, the health space, and I want to be doing a lot more of this. So thank you kindly. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate you.